Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Speaking and Communicating podcast. Today, I am joined by Jenay Leger. She is a podcaster and she has some tips and tidbits that she's going to share with us when it comes to dating. Now, you will admit that most of us, especially in this age of dating apps, we really struggle, of course, unless we are in long-term relationships or are married. So today she's going to help us to navigate these dating waters. And before I go any further, please welcome Jenay Leger. Hi, Jenay.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. I remember when you messaged me that you said that we need to talk about how communication has changed over the years due to especially dating apps, as I mentioned. What is it that you think we struggle with compared to previous generations, for instance, when it comes to communication in dating spaces?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say it's just so different from like my parents' generation to, our generation. My parents' generation, they picked up their phone, the house phone and called. And I just think it's just completely different now with the apps, like you were saying, and texting and, oh, why isn't he texting me back? And there's so many ways of communicating, which can also be not a very good thing.
Mhm.
And then it's just there's so many options as well out there. If you're on a dating app, there's so many other people on it. So it can definitely be really, really hard to, find your person. And then on
Mhm.
top of that, just communicating in general, like I was saying, texting and phone calls and it's just so hard to really get someone in person, right? And just
Right.
speak in person. Sometimes it's really, really difficult. And just dating in general is communication is the biggest aspect of, a real
Mm.
solid foundation. And so
Mhm.
I think I'm just really excited to get into this topic and share my experiences.
Yeah, I think, like you said, because there's so many options, then we, and compared to our parents' generations, we no longer communicate to the other person what makes us unhappy in the relationship, what we expect. The easiest way now is to just ghost them and
Mm,
move on to swiping again. We
right.
then we don't actually sit down and work things out. So how can we go past that? How can we, instead of just thinking we're just going to swipe for the rest of our lives, how can we go past that and actually learn to communicate and express and let the other person understand where we're coming from?
Yeah, so ghosting, like you were saying, it's frustrating. I think if you are talking to someone, maybe you went on a few dates with someone and, you're not really getting a response, you're like, why are they ghosting me? I think it's very, very rude and just so inconsiderate when someone ghosts you. Um, I feel like if you haven't met yet, it's not really technically considered ghosting because, you haven't met yet. I think if you have
Yeah.
been on a date, at least one date, and you get ghosted, it's fair to say like, hey, like just let me know if, you want to continue this, or if not, that's totally fine. But I think just communicating and letting that person have the right to, respond back and just say, hey, I really liked you, but I don't see this moving forward. And I think it's so many people just ghost because it's easy. That's what I think it is. It's easier to just ignore them than tell them how they feel,
And
unfortunately.
here's the problem with that. So if he ghosts and I keep messaging and saying, hey, what happened? We were on a date, it seemed to go well, and now you've ghosted me. Why aren't you responding to my messages? I am called desperate, pick me, you crazy, you
Mhm.
know? What so a lot of women as well then become afraid to even ask. Once a
Right.
person goes, what happened? Because you don't want to be seen or perceived as those things.
Right.
Now, you have that one aspect of being ghosted. And now there's something I learned this past year, which is called love bombing. Have you heard of that?
Yes, love bombing.
I actually had the experience first before I heard of the term. And when I was talking to a friend of mine, she said, friend, you were love bombed. I'm like, what are you talking about? What exactly is love bombing?
Yeah, so it really is, it's so horrible, but it's basically, we were talking about this a little before the podcast, when
Mm.
someone is so aggressively like messaging you and sending you a bunch of text messages, just kind of like blowing you up and really being overly almost like an obsession, right? And just very
Oh,
all up in your
every like
grill.
2 days, it took me out to dinner. And he
Right,
called
right.
me every day.
Dinners a lot and just maybe even hanging out a bunch, just really
Right.
all up on you. And then
Mm.
all of a sudden they just cut you off, just nothing.
Right?
It's
How does it go from that high to ghosting
I
without
really
even telling me goodbye? It's not a match.
right. I think a big aspect of it is
Mm.
they get so excited that they're talking to you and they're like on this not in love, but like a high of being just like so happy they're talking to someone.
Mm.
And I think it's almost like the honeymoon stage, and then they either find someone else to talk to and repeat with the next person. I think a lot of
Mm.
people do that. Or they figure that, they might not be interested anymore and they literally just move on. And
Which
I
is
think it's
completely fine, but why
right.
not let me know? And more than
Let me
anything, it
know.
sounds to me like you're saying they always have this adrenaline rush of meeting a new person every now and
Right.
then.
Right.
So it's not about you. It's just something that they keep feeding inside of them. They must always meet a new person, feel the new butterflies every time. That's
Exactly.
just how they conduct themselves. Yeah, I like I said, I only heard of the term last year
Yeah.
after going through the experience. So anybody who's going through these frustrations, what is it that you need to look out for, that you can look out for in order to avoid potential ghosting, if possible, or potential love bombing? To
Yeah. So
actually find a real person, what are some of the things that you can look out for?
yeah, I think the love bombing, I think if you notice that they're really like going a little too fast, just at
Mm.
first when you're first getting to know each other, I think that's something to be very cognizant about. Maybe throw a little red flag in your head of, they're being a little too much.
Mhm.
And really just be super aware of all of these things that are happening. And maybe some things are like a yellow flag, like a cautious, but not a red flag. And just keep those in your head. And I also think, you know, you can give someone a chance, but if you go on a few dates or even one or two dates and you're like, you know what, I really don't see this moving forward, they don't want the same thing I want, we don't vibe, we don't connect, then just tell them, I don't think it's working out for me. As far as ghosting,
Mhm.
I mean, if I messaged someone maybe twice and they didn't answer, I would just be like, all right, I'm done trying, because at the same time it's like
Yeah.
you don't want to waste your time and they're
Mhm.
clearly not answering and it's just disrespectful. But I would
Right.
just stop answering because that person clearly, you deserve better, you know?
I've seen in the movies where somebody was ghosted and the best friend would say, "Oh, maybe he got arrested. Maybe he got hit by a
Right.
car." Like we try to make up these stories to
Yeah.
excuse the ghosting, but all he really did was ghost. Because I
Mhm.
remember my brother's generation growing up. We're in our 40s now. So when he was growing up, our parents used to say to them, "It's not good to dump a lady.
Mm.
Don't dump a woman that's mean and cruel." So what they did was they would either ignore you or do something that is unbecoming, or just the behavior will change, not in a positive way, so
Mhm.
that you, the lady, would be fed up and say, "You know what, I'm done." So you dump them because they were
Right.
told you must never dump a lady. That just makes you the worst male person ever. So, do you think sometimes ghosting comes from that, to avoid dumping the woman?
Maybe. I think that could be a total possibility because I know a lot of people don't like confrontation and just that
Mm.
bad energy together. And so I think a lot of the times as people get nervous to hurt other people's feelings, like I don't want to tell this girl like I'm not into her. But in reality, I think
Much
most
better
women
than.
would just rather just have a text saying like, hey, I don't think that this is going to work out, but I wish you all the best. Like it can be short, sweet, and
Please, that
you
would be
know,
so much better. That would be so
right.
much better. Yeah. And then what are other things that a person can look out for? If the guy cancels on you, for instance,
Mm.
you were gonna have a date and, oh, I got caught up at work. If it happens the first time, is that a red flag, or he really was caught up at work? Just give him another chance.
So it's funny you asked this. I ran into this so much before I met my boyfriend. I literally had dates lined up and I got ditched so many times and I was just like, what is the point? Why are we gonna do this? So
Hmm.
my rule is if they cancel once, make a new plan. If you continue to talk and you still want to meet, make a
Mhm.
second plan. If they cancel a second time, then I'm like, all right. I give them
That's a
one
sign.
shot or I guess two, I guess you could say, but
Right.
I think that's fair, I think.
Mm. Because I think we're trying to be careful of n- having one mishap and giving up too soon, which
Right.
could have been potentially a good relationship in the long run, but also not being played that many times when you could
Exactly.
see the red flags coming. Yes. So sometimes there's that tricky balance between, am I giving up too soon? Am I red flagging something was not a red flag? Because life does happen.
Right, right.
Yeah,
100%.
life does happen. So when you are navigating these dating spaces, what else should you look out for?
I would say definitely look out for patterns changing. I think that's something I'm always very aware of when I'm talking with someone new, just like, if you're talking consistently and then you don't hear from him for, a couple days, and then all of a sudden he's like texting you up the yin yang. And I think
Mm-hmm.
just really watching the patterns. Or
Right.
maybe he calls you every night and then all of a sudden he didn't call you. And
Mm.
you can just be aware of it, but I think, just kinda keeping it in the back of your head.
Do
I
you
would say
tell him, or do you ask and say, oh, you used to call me every day for the last 2 months. What happened in the last 2 days? Oh, are
yeah,
you going to feel desperate and pick me and these negative things you get called?
yeah,
Because
I
that's what we're
think
trying
it
to be
depends.
careful of as well.
Right,
Hmm.
it depends on the guy too, because they might be like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry, like, I was out to dinner with the family and I completely forgot to call you," but maybe we texted you, Just
Okay.
some type of communication, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Other things to look out for would just be, if he's being honest with you, if he's saying, I don't know, he has a work trip, but he's really going to see another girl. I'm just making up silly things,
Right.
but
Right.
um, just the honesty obviously is a huge factor. The consistency, I think, is so key. I would say don't get catfish. That's never a fun time. Make sure the person you're going out on a date with is the person that, they look like their photos.
The most
Uh,
important thing is, that's why it's to meet in public, the first few dates at
right.
least.
Oh,
Meet
absolutely.
in public. Because
Definitely.
especially since COVID, there's always been these excuses of, oh, we cannot go anywhere. Everything is closed.
Right.
Everything's on lockdown. You can walk around your neighborhood.
Right.
You can walk
One,
around the park. That wasn't on lockdown. Yeah.
yeah, there's always something you can do for sure.
Mm,
And I just
mm,
think having your life goals and things like that always on the top of your mind, because
mhm.
when you are going on dates, like, you want to make sure that your life goals align with theirs. And so think about yourself too, and say, could this
Right.
person, fit into my life? Will their lifestyle match mine? And
Mhm.
just being very aware of, like, maybe you don't want, I don't know, someone that works nights, because that's your time that you really enjoy and you want to spend time with them. So maybe don't
Right.
date someone that has a nighttime
If they
job.
have a job that requires them to work at night, yeah, something
Right, I'm just
practical like
little
that.
things, but I feel like
But some
just
people like the outdoor stuff, and you might be an indoor girl.
yes, hobbies,
Mhm.
that is a big one too. Like, make sure, like, you don't have to do every single thing, and I think it's healthy to have different hobbies in
Right.
some cases, but make sure you're not like you were saying, "Oh, I love hiking," and you're like, "I would never go on a hike."
Or people, some like to just stay home, Netflix and chill. But
Right.
for you, the
Hobbies.
minute you wake up, even if it's not a work day, you have to get out of the house. You just don't like being at home. Some people really are like that, and that's what brings
Yes,
them joy. So
that's a
if you
big
have those two extremes, they might not gel.
yeah, that's a good one for sure.
Mhm. I've heard of the phrase "you are what you attract." What do you think of that?
That's an interesting one. So I think that if you're, if you're content in yourself, if you're confident, if you're exuberant and you have this great energy around you, right? And you're meeting new people, I really think that that will vibe off, and I think other people will be attracted to you. And I think um, if you're kind of more of a low key person and maybe you're not as outgoing and you're more of like a shy person, like you might attract someone that's kind of in that realm as well, like another
Mhm.
shy, um, what is reserved person, you know what I
Right,
mean?
introverted.
Introverted, yeah. It's because I'm super extroverted. So like I had to date someone that was also extroverted. And I just when I met my
Is
boyfriend, I was like,
it?
I knew, like, okay, this is gonna work.
That's interesting because sometimes I hear what you're saying and I agree to a certain extent, but sometimes they say, have you seen those married couples where the husband might be the introvert and the wife is the talkative one, or the husband is always talking and the wife is the more
Yes.
reserved, feminine, ladylike one? And you can see that they have great chemistry, but there's this complementing each other due to those things in their personalities being polar opposite. Sometimes it could work,
Right.
but I
Opposites
think we
attract
need
in
to be
some
careful
situations.
not for it to be too extremes. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Oh, I was just saying sometimes opposites do attract, but I think what like exactly what you're saying, it has to kind of like balance each other out. Like maybe one person is
Mm,
just like super bubbly and they're totally fine with that, but their partner is kind of more reserved and likes to just kind of sit and hang out, but they're fine with their partner, going to talk to everyone. I
yes.
think the balance of that and like making sure that both parties are fine with, what the other one's doing, I think.
Mm, right. And then what about, so now that we've established that this generation struggles with communication, one thing that has come to mind for me is the vulnerability aspect. I think more than anything, we're just afraid. We've been hurt, we've been ghosted, we've been love bombed.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that we can still do to open up again, to communicate, risking being ghosted, love bombed, hurt? Because I'm thinking of sometimes you would hear stories of where a couple was dating. I know a particular celebrity couple, and the wife was talking about this, and I won't mention names, but she said she broke up. They had been in a long-term relationship, so she broke up with her now husband. They were dating at the time. They broke up. He went on to date someone else, and
Mm-hmm.
she actually wrote a letter and cried in front of him and said, "You hurt me. I thought this was gonna be us." And she really poured her heart out. I remember the first time hearing the story, I'm like, oh, I could never do that. She's so brave. I could
Mm.
never let a guy see me and how much he hurt me to that extent. Which, funny enough, when he tells the story, he wasn't aware, first of all, of how much he hurt her. And her opening up to him like that touched something in him. I don't know how to describe it. Touched
Mm.
something and made him see things differently. And that's why today they're now married.
Interesting. Wow.
But to go to that extent, I think a lot of us, me included, I'm so scared of going to that extent if we are still just dating.
Mm.
But for her to be that courageous, to be that vulnerable, is
Right.
what made him realize that this is the kind of woman I want in my life.
Yeah.
She's that real. She's that, her heart is that open. But it being that open, it's open to hurt as well. And it could have gone either way. How do
Definitely.
we open up ourselves again and learn to
Yeah.
trust that much again?
I would say definitely vulnerability is it's very, very hard and breaking down those walls. And I think one thing to always keep in mind is love is a risk. It really is. it sounds simple, and I know it's very, very complex, but I think
Yeah.
if you are in a good position in yourself and you feel good, you're confident, you're ready to move on into your next relationship. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of did the work on yourself, like we were talking about, loving yourself. And I think that in both parties, um, of course, there is always a risk to get hurt. And I think just really getting to know someone from like to the core and asking the
Mm-hmm.
hard questions up front and early. So you kind of know, okay, maybe this guy doesn't want to have kids and I really want to have kids. So this is not going to work out. Or I
Right.
really wanted to live in California and, I'm on the East Coast now, but I really want to live in California one day. And this guy is like, absolutely not. I want to live in Canada.
I want to live in snow.
Right. Like that's just not going to work. So I think
Mm.
as hard as it is, sometimes you might have to have the tough conversations about, getting to know someone. What are your life goals, and getting down to like the big, big aspects of life. But also I think another layer of this is, you know, sharing only what you feel comfortable with, right? Like you might not
Yeah,
share like some deep stuff, in the first couple dates, but like if you
of course.
continue to get to know someone and they're accepting and open to you expressing these things about yourself, but they should also
Mhm.
do the same. They should be telling you stories about, maybe something traumatic that they went through, and kind of
It should
sharing.
match.
Yeah, right,
Yes.
right, matching.
Hmm.
And I think a big red flag would be if you keep sharing some things and they're not,
He barely says anything. Oh,
right,
that's small talk. Hmm.
right. And like just understanding that, if they do something or say something and it kind of rubs you the wrong way or upsets you or maybe is disrespectful, I think sharing that right away. If something is that is said, you gotta nip it in the bud right away, because
Right.
then they're gonna continue that if you don't tell them. They're,
Mhm.
no one's a mind reader. Like you have to tell men sometimes, hey, that really hurt my feelings, or I really didn't like when
I
you
think the reason
embarrassed.
we don't, or we are afraid to, is we either going to be called crazy, or
me.
we are afraid to chase them away. I know some of my friends, if they feel like they've spoken too soon, it's too
Mhm.
early in the dating relationship. If they upfront ask the tough questions, they feel like he's gonna be driven away. He's gonna think I'm too, you know, it's a lot. Too early,
Right.
too soon. We- Nobody seems to know the right balance
Mhm. No, I agree.
of
It can
having
be
these
it
tough
can be tough,
conversations. Mm,
but as long as you lay out what you want and see what they
yeah,
want,
it's better to
take it
just know
slow.
early.
Yeah,
Mm,
just take it slow and just really take it day by day, as hard as that sometimes is.
mm,
Um, and just share what you're comfortable with. I would say that's a big one, is
right.
don't overshare, too soon. Um, but definitely share those big life things that you want.
Hmm. So, what are the two key things that make a relationship work and stays long term?
Ooh, I would say loyalty and honesty.
Loyalty and honesty. Loyalty and honesty. Okay. Loyalty and honesty. Hence being that vulnerable to the extent
Yes.
where you frame from the person. Yes, I think that's the honesty part. And therefore, just before we conclude and ask for your social media handles, what's the last thing that you want, especially women? Because I'm speaking from a woman's point of view, and a lot of my friends are in the same position. What is the one thing you want for them to, when listening to this, to take away?
Ooh, always stay true to yourself. I would say
Mhm.
that's a huge thing. Make sure if you are ever getting out of a relationship of any sort, make sure you have your me time and just
Mhm.
focus on you. Take yourself out to dinner, go buy yourself those flowers, like literally have yourself and just do everything for yourself, because now you'll learn so much more about yourself through all of these
The
actions.
self-awareness, yes.
Self-awareness is unbelievable when you're just, alone and single and can really focus all your energy on yourself, not anyone else.
Hmm.
Um, And give yourself grace, like learn to love yourself, try new things. You never know who you're going to meet. And, if you are going
Yeah.
to events or if you're invited to events, I should say, whether that be birthday parties or anything like going out to dinner with your friend, I think saying yes to those things because you
Yeah.
never know who you're going to meet, right? And
Right.
also be like, let other people know, people you're close with, hey, I'm single, like let me know if you have any guys out there that you could hook me up with. Like I think
Mhm.
your friends and family will know you the best. And so
Of
just kind of
course.
letting everyone know, hey, I'm kind of on the hunt for my man, and just be aware and let everyone know what you're looking for.
Mm.
I think that's the best
So,
ideas.
despite all the hurt, the ghosting, and the love bombing, get back in the ring.
Yes, absolutely.
Get
And
back
enjoy
in the ring.
enjoy the process.
Right. I think that's the most important one. Just enjoy the process. Just
Definitely.
enjoy the journey. Well, Jenay Leger, before you close, we want to hear all your social media handles so we know where to find you for more dating advice. So where can we find you?
Yes. So you can find me on my podcast Instagram. It's My Naked Mindset. And then on,
My Naked Mindset. That's the
yes,
podcast.
correct. Yep.
Okay. I love that.
And then my personal Instagram is Jazzy Jenay May. And
Okay.
you can
Say
find
that
me,
slowly.
oh, sorry, at Jazzy Jenay May, May. That's my middle name.
Okay. And Jenay is spelled Jenay, right?
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. So we can find Jenay on Jazzy Jenay May on Instagram.
Yep.
My Naked Mindset is the podcast.
Correct.
Thank you so much for the much needed dating advice, Jenay. We are going to go back to the ring despite being ghosted, love bombed, hurt. Just let those go and enjoy the process because at the end of the day, it still is an enjoyable process. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.